30 seconds to tell your previous self something, what would it be?
I think I would go back to the time when I was given the role of sales manager for a team and managing a team. And I would tell myself, hey, stop, listen to all sides of the story. Each one of them has one reality to give you, and then decide on what to do.
And poof, you're back in the present. Now, do you think Nadine back then would have listened?
That's a very good question. Probably not. Probably not. She wasn't ready. Her drive to make a change and get the sales was too high. So it was only when she hit the wall that she had to sit and reflect.
And welcome back to the CoachFul Coaching Leadership Podcast. Today, I am here with Nadine Zeinoun. Did I say that right?
Wow. Amazingly right.
Okay. Don't stroke my ego, okay? If I'm saying it wrong, you got to let me know, okay, Nadine?
No, it's fine.
So Nadine is a professional certified coach with the ICF. But before this recording, we had a pretty interesting conversation about both her journey to where she is now, as well as what she's doing right now to help organizations and individuals reach their potential. So, Nadine, I'm going to hand it over to you for a minute to introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. So as you said, I am an executive coach. So I'm a certified executive coach. I work with, and I'm also a certified team coach. So I work with individuals and teams as well. But in both cases, the focus is on enhancing the emotional intelligence of the individual or the team in order to create better harmony, high performance, while people are happy and they have good well-being. So That's in a nutshell.
Okay. So Nadine, I'm not going to even warm up here in our conversation. I'm going to dive right into this. What are some of the biggest dysfunctions you see in teams today?
Communication, understanding each other, judgment. So, in a team, you always have different people. And when you have differences or diversity, if you want to call it, diversity in terms of personality and how people handle things, how they make decisions, how they see things. So we're all different. And sometimes it's cultural differences as well that come into play. So all of this, our brain doesn't do well with, differences. So it kind of sees, if you're different than me, if you think differently than me, if you operate differently from me, it kind of sees this as a wrong thing and a threat to myself. So this creates problems with communication and understanding each other. And I think that's the major thing. That's why emotional intelligence is really important for, to grow in teams and develop teams, because it helps them create better communication and better understanding of each other.
Yeah, I've heard the saying about human beings. People like being with people like them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that it's good. I mean, with your friends, that's fine. That's your choice.
Yeah.
But in a corporation and any organization or any gathering, that's a lot of times not your choice. And you got to be more willing to work and adapt to other styles and adapt your style as well. And I guess a question to you there is that so when you see these dysfunctions, and boy, have we seen dysfunctions in our careers, what's one of the steps that you take with organizations to help them get over this communication hurdle?
Yeah. Now, if I'm working with a team, it's much easier. So if I want to create, harmony in a team, and I'm working as a team coach, that's much easier than when you're working with the individual, of course. Mm-hmm. But when I'm working with the team, the first thing is aligning expectations. So what are they achieving together? Aligning them on one vision and one goal, so that they feel the commonality that they have, rather than focus on things that are not common between them. Also allowing them to understand what each person brings into this setting. So what's the strength of each person? What do they bring to this team? And at the same time, what are our weaknesses, and how do other people make up for these weaknesses, so that I can see my dependency on others for success, and where I also contribute, because it's important for me to understand how I contribute to to the team. So
Yeah.
that's probably the first thing I would start with usually. But again, it's important to set ground rules on how we're going to communicate. What do we do when conflicts arise?
So, alignment's important. Understanding everyone's style of communication is very important. I guess when you look at the teams that were successful in your travels, when you go through this program with them, what's a successful team look like coming out of this, and what's a not successful team look like? I like to focus on the not successful.
Okay.
And I'll tell you my bias. I think there's an 80-20 rule. Like the biggest impact is from 20% of a population, but it's there's I guess what's your perspective there?
Yeah.
And working teams versus non-working teams in this area.
Now, I would like to think that after they work with me, they're going to become a good team.
Yeah, I hope so too.
But the challenges are, and sometimes there are some people who are still very much attached to their reality, to their beliefs, to their assumptions, to how they see the world, and they think that they're right and other people are wrong. So this judgment, I do try to move past it and help the team move through it. But sometimes some people are very much attached to this, and if they're not ready and open to make a change, I cannot force them to. I can make things, can make them see things. I can bring things to their awareness, and the conflicts to their awareness. And now what I usually do is, if I do sense that, I work with them on a one-to-one basis as well. Of course, and we agree on this from the start. So everything is clear and transparent from the start. So I do try to work with them on a one-to-one basis, because sometimes people need that one-to-one attention and work and development. So I do try to do that. But again, it's never 100% in your control. I mean, you're working with a team. There are different people, different members, and people respond differently to the same thing.
Yeah. And by the way, what I really meant by the 80-20 in this context, and I should clarify, it's not about you. It's specifically, when by the time companies come to, yourself or come to me, they know there's a problem. There knows a problem. It's more than one session. Things are not
absolutely
fixed in one session, probably not in 1 month or 1 quarter or 1 year. It is the ongoing behavioral, commitment to behavioral change that's required. What where some of my bias comes in, I've been in multiple organizations where we've had multiple types of training, and not just, team training and such, but just you see that fall off. Like there's a little hype, at this kickoff. Cool, this is awesome, but the culture hasn't changed, and that behavior change doesn't persist. So, as you said, it is the accountability of the individuals that you're talking to. It's up to them to continue that, and that's where some of my bias comes from. And I guess follow-up question is is there any way that we can ensure that when you're coaching an individual or an organization, that there is some accountability, that there is a commitment to behavior change?
Yeah. Well, if it's sometimes that's a challenge. The commitment thing is a challenge, because sometimes if it's the company who wants this person to develop or change their behavior, but they don't see it, that's a big challenge. And it does happen. Now, luckily, it's not very often, but it does happen. And we do face executives who don't see a reason for a change. I mean, what's in it for me? There's no buy-in into a need for change. And it's difficult to work with someone who doesn't want to change or who doesn't see the problem. But of course, we try different ways. I personally try to understand what's making it difficult for them to accept this process. What is really, what are they worried about? What's the fear there? Or perhaps they don't have clarity on how we can work together. And I try to focus on what they want to get out of it, because sometimes they're resisting because the company wants one thing, but they want something different. So it's good to start with something that they want to change. And usually this thing that they want to change will connect with what the company wants to change as well as we go along the process. But of course, it's a process, as you said. It's not a one-time thing. even
Yeah.
with the team. It's not like 1 or 2 sessions. It needs to be over,
Yeah.
a long period of time so that people can really embody whatever accountability they have set for
Yeah.
themselves and whatever change they want to make.
Yeah, I find that probably one of the biggest challenges, and kudos to you for tackling that with so many organizations. We talked a little bit about what makes people change or want to change. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I guess what's your perspective on this? Like, and you have a lot of experience in industry, in coaching teams, in coaching individuals. What makes someone really want, like when you see a success story, what makes someone really, really want to change?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And I can see, or from my experience, I feel that majority of the time, people, they want to leave a pain, a certain pain. Okay. So if they don't feel that they have a pain in a certain area, they won't change. And that's what happens when an organization comes and tells you, like, I want you to work with this executive to be less aggressive, let's say. And this is something I really had. Okay.
Yes.
So I had an executive who they wanted to promote, and they not promote, but he was going to become the CEO.
Oh, wow.
But he had this attitude, which was too firm and being perceived as aggressive. Okay. Now, the thing is, this person saw his attitude as firmness and assertiveness and something that is key for success. So he attached a positive thing to this behavior. So there was no pain. There was no pain. There was success.
Yeah.
How can I change something that's successful? I mean, my mind's not going to do that. I'm not going to want to change something that's successful. So we had to work on trying to look at, okay, what is the pain there? Okay, maybe it is successful in it, but maybe success is possible in a different way. But we had to look at the pain.
Yeah.
And we had to do a 360 for him to see how people perceive him and how this perception can impact the business on the long term. And it was only then that, and it took time for him to acknowledge that, no, it is painful and I need to change this.
Yeah.
And find a different way to be successful.
Yeah. I can acknowledge that I had to do a lot of that work myself as a leader where, and you know, I identify exactly what you said. Like it works. I've been successful.
Yeah.
Why change? It brings the right outcomes. And yet what you could leave in your wake is, you know, there's some damage along the way. Hopefully it wasn't that bad. Right. But it takes that introspection as well as that, you know, looking outwards too. What was the impact? And exactly what you said, it was, one of the biggest things I found from getting a coach and having a coach was someone who helps you look at the other side of things. Like there's more than one way to achieve this.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, and your strength might be firmness, but applied at the right time in the right situations. It doesn't need to be with everything. And we have to employ all the tools at our disposal. And I had that problem. Everything was urgent. Everything had to be done yesterday. And that created unnecessary stress on everyone.
Absolutely.
But hey, I've been successful doing it. It's not the way, it's not sustainable, right?
And you know what, David? Because sometimes, and I don't want to stereotype, okay, but usually, all right, or what I see in most common is that when people, and I know it for myself because I was like that. So when people focus a lot on the results and actions and they're fast and they're driven, they don't notice the people much, usually.
Yeah.
Okay, unless they've developed themselves and matured, etc. So we tend to only look at success as results.
Yep.
So for us, if success is results and results are coming, then I'm successful. Why do I need to change? But when you broaden that perspective, and success is not just getting the result now, it's retaining the people, keeping people happy, keeping people engaged, keeping people committed. And you start looking at the long-term effect on people. If we continue with this behavior, then the definition of success changes. And once that changes, then am I successful if I keep this behavior? Maybe not.
Yeah. It is very interesting. And it's something to build awareness in a lot of you know, groups of humans that are together. A lot of times it's just, here's the target, go for the target. And if you leave a wasteland and, you know, because of that, or, you know, a lot of people are pushed down or perceived to be pushed down, along the way or just burnt out, whatever it is, this is a reflective moment, right? It's because it's a lot of work I did on for myself as well. And I'm glad we have folks like yourself helping individuals do this type of work.
And you too.
Yeah. And it's because, and, hopefully, like, I think you could probably relate to this. It's because you've taken that journey yourself that where you see the benefits of it and why you want to help others take the same journey.
Exactly.
Right? You felt the pain and what that impact is on others. On the topic of journey, I'd love to learn more about your journey. You have a very interesting journey to where you are right now. Like, here we are right here. And for the folks listening and watching, here's Nadine right now. But a lot, you had to do a lot to get to this point where you are. So I want to open up to you to just talk a little bit about Nadine's journey and how you got to where you are.
Okay. I love that. Thank you. So first of all, for people to know, I'm originally from Lebanon. So I do live in Ottawa now, but I'm originally from Lebanon. I moved here a couple of years back. So I am a child of war. So I grew up during the Civil War. And I believe even that time when I was, a very young kid, something was shaped in me because of the wars. I must say that when I was a kid, I used to see hatred around. So people from different political parties arguing, fighting, getting into conflict over silly stuff, things that no one can change. I mean, we have no control over these things, but they're just sitting there and having problems and conflict. And even in the same family. So in our family, there were some people who we would stop talking to and we would stop visiting and they would stop visiting us just because of political views that are different. And since then, it was so interesting because I used to sit with this group and I used to listen to them and I was a little girl, but I could see that whatever they said made sense. Then I go sit with the other group and I would hear them and I would feel that made sense too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to me, who's right, who's wrong. And it was at that moment, I believe that I started seeing that there's no right or wrong. There are just different perceptions of reality. And if you could get people to see that and notice that, you can create harmony. And that was something that was really built into me, the love to create harmony, and I think that really, it left a mark in me. And then later, as I didn't start as a coach, so I was in the pharmaceutical industry. Corporate world is difficult and tough and a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And again, when, I was doing really well in marketing, and then I was, shifted into sales where I had to lead a team. Mm-hmm. That was very difficult for me. So I was someone who's very driven, very business driven, very results oriented, and I wasn't really aware of what was going on at the emotional level with the team. So I started noticing that, okay, I love harmony, but how am I creating harmony in business? Focusing on the business doesn't create that harmony. And I went through a tough journey because I had a lot of setbacks. And, after being like an award-winning marketeer, it was difficult for my ego to accept that this is difficult and I'm kind of failing. I'm not really doing a good job. So that's when my journey started. Okay. And luckily I had a great mentor at Merck who helped me and supported me, helped me to shift my perspective onto things. And that's where my journey started, I would say. So I think these two things really impacted me. And the love for emotional intelligence grew even more when I had people from my family go through tough mental health challenges. And I saw how mental health can really, way we think and our thoughts, how they really impact our mood, and then how our mood impacts everything, like our success and everything we do. And that really got to me. And that's when I fell upon emotional intelligence. And I felt, oh my God, I need to get this. I probably can help these people and help other people. And so I think these are three major things in my life that really shaped my love and my passion for emotional intelligence. And in addition to all those, my faith. Mm-hmm. I am a believer in God and Jesus, and, my faith directs me a lot. And emotional intelligence is something that helps me kind of preach the love that we want in our faith. So because it helps people really create good understanding. It helps people know how to love each other in a better way and how to create really peace in organizations and the world, of course, because organizations are part of this world.
Yeah, that's a lovely story, Nadine. Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing me.
Yeah. When you talk about harmony, and I see some, again, reflecting on my own childhood growing up, like I feel like I was not very political. My parents probably leaned on one side of a certain party, right? And other family members on another party. I tried to stay as neutral as possible because I didn't really care. I thought they were all liars. So, but I'll take the things that were best, that I made most sense, that sounded most factual and sounded like it was doable from each side. And I think we got to always lend that ear, just don't take the one thing that because it resonates with you. Like, well, let's think about how realistic this is in the first place. I guess what can we learn from that? Because I see some of that, we see a pair of polarization more so in the United States with a lot of my friends and colleagues over there. But even here in Canada, right? You're at a dinner party with friends and family, and fortunately it doesn't come up often, but when it does come up, you could see, both sides kind of like starting like, oh, and I'm just like, guys, grab a beer. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And what I don't like the most, again, my opinion is that if you don't have a strong opinion on each side of either side, the perception of you is, oh, you don't have an opinion. I'm like, actually, I have a very strong opinion. Is that you're
both of you are wrong.
Well, no, you like the Toronto Maple Leafs and you like the Montreal Canadiens, okay, and you will die for that team no matter what. That's how I see you guys, right? I don't like hockey, and I'm just watching you guys fight. What a great, and I'm sitting back eating popcorn watching you guys do it. It's so fun, right? So that's sarcasm. But I guess what advice would you give to people out there, like who just, in families and friends and colleagues where there is, two camps, political beliefs, just very, very polar opposites? What would you say to them?
Yeah, and that's a wonderful question. I think maybe the most effective thing is to know that there is no one reality and there is no one truth. And it's about being humble enough and breaking our ego a little bit to I would say, accept that I don't have the truth. And I know that's difficult because I was in many situations where I thought I had the truth and I wanted to convince people of my truth. But, when you get yourself to be humble enough and open enough to listen, really listen, okay? And we call this in conversational intelligence, listen to connect. That is really listening without any bias, without any judgments, with full openness for me to really understand what makes you so attached to the other party. What makes you so much against this party? If I really can get myself, and it's not easy, it takes a lot of coaching to get there, to open up and do that, believe me, you will start saying that there is some truth to that. There is something that I can connect with. And vice versa. If they can do this and I can see your perspective and keep my perspective maybe, or perhaps we both together reach a third perspective that would be good for both of us, that would be amazing. But the problem is egos, lust for power, control, these stand in the way. Unfortunately.
And it's also experiences, right? Anchors individuals in specific beliefs. Like one individual I know, like, it's unfortunate, and you could say that about me and my cynicism in certain areas of life, but this person has cynicism towards all corporations, right? And it's whatever they went through in their corporate life, and there's a overall cynicism they have, right? Whereas I work in a corporate, I don't have that cynicism in the same way this person has, right? And it paints the worldview, right? Everything is bad, right? Everything they see involved with corporations is bad. I'm like, that's absolutely not true, right?
Yeah.
So
But I can connect with that at the same time because, there's a deep pain there from their experience that is actually putting a lens in front of their eyes that is, it's causing them to see corporate stuff through a threatful lens. And I understand that. I mean, it's not easy. And it's about really understanding where their pain is from and how their pain is influencing whatever they're seeing.
Yeah.
And accepting that they're not wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not right. It's just about different perspectives.
It is. And I have a connection to working with pharmaceutical companies as well, right? And there are literally people I know who all they heard, they don't know much about the industry. It's only what they heard on the news. And by the way, news corporations are paid for sensational stuff. Okay. Again, 80-20 rule, right? Like the things that barely happen, but are sensational. and their worldview on pharma is painted, they're all crooks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, the next time you get cancer or a family member gets sick, just remember that. Okay. Because they are creating life-saving medicine too. Right.
Exactly.
So that's an example of like just beliefs and just painted there. I do want to talk a little bit about mental health, and because this is important to me as well. It sounds like it's important to you. And, specifically, I want your opinion on this, where, you spoke a lot about the way you talk to yourself and the way you believe, the stories you tell yourself. And that's being very much hanging in my mind for a while. The concept of the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves. It's been a theme on this podcast many times from different individuals. What story are you telling yourself? What's the state of mind and a body that is causing the story to be told, which affects everything else, by the way, right?
Of course.
I'm going to leave it very open. What's your take on that? The stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the connection with your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell you that, the hormones we're going through influence the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is from conversational intelligence. It's not my work. It's Judith Glazer's work. So what I learned from conversational intelligence, and I see it in life, is that if I trust you, David, my story about you is going to be totally different from any other story. Of course. I mean, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But not only that, when I trust you, when we connect, we create oxytocin for each other, the hormone oxytocin. Yeah. And the hormone oxytocin activates parts of the brain that can empathize and can connect. So let's say, David, you just shout at me, you're so angry, you're so frustrated, and you just come and talk to me in a very, let's say, usually unacceptable way. Because me and you have oxytocin, the story I'm going to be telling myself is, oh my God, something must be wrong with David. I'm worried about him. He never speaks in that way. Oh, what can I do to help him? So it's out of love. Why? Because there's oxytocin. The oxytocin influences what I see.
Yeah, what is going on? Is the feel good hormone or what?
Yes, it's the bonding hormone. They used to call it the bonding hormone because it's what is produced during breastfeeding. So it creates a bond between the mom, but it's also created during trust. And this is something that we didn't know before.
I have read about studies like that. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So on the other hand, if I do not trust you, if there's something that happened between us that, wasn't talked about and we never really addressed, I'm going to feel like distrustful towards you. What happens is distrust is going to create a different hormone in my body, which is cortisol, which is the stress hormone we all know. Yeah. Now, the cortisol is going to change how I see reality. So if you come and, behave in the same way you would behave with me when I'm in trust, this time I'm not going to be empathetic because my cortisol blocks the prefrontal cortex, which I need and it activates my survival brain. Yeah. So I am going to look at it as a threat. And I'm going to say, what? How could he talk to me this way? Yeah. Disrespectful, cannot tolerate this. I need to set, a limit. Everything will change. So there was compassion. There was need to support and help. Here, it's the same person with the same situation, in the same situation. It's just dependent on my hormones and what I'm going through physiologically.
Yeah. And what I think you're might be implying there too is that we ourselves as humans have a hand in what hormones are actually being released, right? Whether it's something that is more about compassion, right, for the other individual, or empathy or sympathy even, versus this is a threat, right?
Yes,
And
if I'm aware.
Yeah. And that's the work we're talking about here, that
Yes.
we all need to do for ourselves, is the awareness when we are about to move into that negative state, that whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. And the one thing I want to mention is that, when we say threat, it doesn't have to be an actual threat to my life.
Yeah.
It's just what my brain perceives, my limbic brain, the emotional brain, what it perceives as a threat. So again, but the main thing I want people to know is that me, Nadine, the same person, can react totally different to the same situation. If I am in cortisol, I will see things in a totally different way when I'm in oxytocin.
Yeah.
So what am I trying to say? When we see people react defensively or offensively, please, it's not because they're bad people. It's because their brain was triggered and they're full of cortisol.
Yeah.
So my question is, what in my behavior created that cortisol?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I adjust that?
Mm-hmm.
And put some oxytocin in the air so that whatever we're talking about will be accepted, they will be open, they will talk back, they will give me ideas, and we can have a beautiful discussion and conversation. I don't know if that was clear.
That was very clear for me. And I think for the audience here, what I think I would appreciate to hear from you as a next step is, what sort of work does an individual need to do now to improve that story they are telling themselves, to either go into that I'm compassionate with oxytocin as a result, or this is a stress, cortisol?
Yeah, beautiful question. So the first thing would be awareness. I need to be aware that I may be wrong. I need to be aware that I am now triggered. My cortisol is high. I'm feeling something. And this comes from emotional intelligence, emotional self-awareness. You need to be aware that you're going through some emotion that may be impacting how you're seeing the situation. And the more aware you are of the emotion, how it impacts your vision of the situation, what's the story you're telling yourself, and then just create a little bit of doubt on that story. And I always tell people, because, we're so attached to our stories, it's difficult for us to say, oh, this is wrong. How can it be wrong? He said that last time. She did that. And it's not the first time. And I know that. I mean, we say that. I say that. I know. I'm a human being as well. Yeah, getting detached from that story is difficult. And that's why I tell people, okay, so let's just imagine 2% of your story could be wrong. 98% is correct. But just imagine that there's a possibility that 2% is not true. What are the other possibilities out there? What other possible scenarios could there be? And that's amazing, because that question shifts people into looking into other scenarios. But in order to be able to do that, they need to sit with their emotion a little bit and calm themselves, like acknowledge that they're going through this. This is what they're doing. And then perhaps take a few deep breaths, because breathing activates our parasympathetic nervous system. So it will counteract the effect of cortisol to a certain extent. So breathe slowly, deeply for 1 minute. You don't have to do it forever. Just doing that allows you to start looking at those other perspectives. Because if you're too stuck in cortisol, you won't be able to do that. It's going to be very difficult. So allow yourself time to just relax, and then throw doubt on that story. What could be a different story? What could be a different scenario? What could be a different explanation, rather than the assumptions that I'm making in my head?
Yes. Well, I think the more work individuals can do for themselves, the better the people around them will be because of how you are reacting to your natural your environment. And honestly, like, it just creates a better world, better organizations, better families, better governments, better everything. Now, if all of us would do that work, two more questions for you. One of them is, put you in a time machine, Nadine, and you get to go back to any point in time in your life, and I dropped you there, and you have 30 seconds to tell your previous self something. What would that be? 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. That's a very tough question. I have only 30 seconds to tell
You only have 30 seconds to tell your previous self something. What would it be?
I think I would go back to the time when I was given the role of sales manager for a team and managing a team. And I would tell myself, hey, stop, listen to all sides of the story. Each one of them has one reality to give you, and then decide on what to do.
And poof, you're back in the present. Now, do you think Nadine back then would have listened?
That's a very good question. Probably not. Probably not. She wasn't ready. Her drive to make a change and get the sales was too high. So it was only when she hit the wall that she had to sit and reflect. And sometimes this is how it is in life,
and it's
unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Someone told me recently, like, I was like, why am I feeling like this right now? And they go, you've been successful, but perhaps some of that feedback you got was perceived as positive reinforcement of a negative behavior. And I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And
wow. I love that.
It sat with me. By the way, it was my wife, who's the wise person who shared that with me. And I'm like, wow, I think you're right, honey. So last question. What's one question I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Nothing's coming to my mind. You asked me so many questions and we had such a great conversation that I don't feel like I needed to say something that I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then what's one question you've been anxious to ask?
So I would love to hear about your journey. I don't know if we have that much time, but just give me one major thing that really shaped who you are today.
Yeah. Learned responsibility at a young age in a big family, got lazy, got complacent, got really fat, hit a wall as a young adult, made big changes in my life, took responsibility for my life. The drive came from that.
Wow.
Insane drive. And so much drive that eventually I realized there's more than one way to be successful, and which is prompted this, version 3, 4, 5 of what you're seeing right now.
Wow. Amazing.
That's the 30-second version of my journey.
I love that. It's a beautiful journey, David, and well done on taking the responsibility and creating that drive. Yeah.
Well, Nadine, it's been 41 minutes with you. I can go on much longer, but thank you very much for sharing today. And this was an awesome podcast today with you.
Thank you for having me and for this wonderful discussion.
All right. We're signing off.